Welcome to the CatholicPsych Show. We'll be talking about Justin Timberlake getting arrested and the reactions to this poor man's tragedy. We'll also be talking about North Korea and Russia, bosom buddies nowadays. And finally, the 10 Commandments are making a comeback. Dr. Greg, and this is where we cue the music when we have it. The graphic and the music for the
Oh no, we needed the banjo, right?
I don't think we're gonna do banjo.
I think we'll come up with some flashy banjo music. It'll be great.
You need a lot of context to make the banjo cool. You can do it, but you need a lot of context.
That's true. Well, those are some fun headlines. I think your headline game is improving.
Yes. Well, part of the feedback, one of the comments in YouTube was how have you gone from Catholic mindfulness to political like polarization or something like that. It's like, all right, let's try and get away from the politics or political partisanship, I think the comment was. So we want to have a diversity of topics here. We're all about diversity.
We want to have a diversity of topics, but I feel like it's worth talking about a little bit that like this show has a particular context. Yeah. So like people are like, it's like blowing people's minds that we could possibly do anything that's just like a little bit more laid back. It's commentary focused. It's like, we're producing like solid, really great content that's on integration. It's on being Catholic, psychology, mental health. And there's a place for a really professional, polished, content. But we're also human. It's like part of my Being Human podcast. It's like part of that, like we can be human in different ways. So we can have like laid back commentary, like we have perspectives. I'm not claiming anything I say in this show is, well, sometimes I claim that some things are true or not true, but I also say when it's like my opinion, just my opinion, folks.
Please refer to how wrong Dr. Greg was in our discussion about aliens.
Don't get me started on that again. It's so many ways I was right, but I will say, like, okay, this is my opinion. Like, we're just commenting. It's commentary. This is a commentary show. Also, my wife has warned me. I was supposed to tell you today. I'm still on a lot of cold medication, and my snappy, on edge, irritable parts are very strong.
That's great. So, but what you don't see, this is code between me and your wife. You think it's a warning to like stay away, whereas I know she's saying like get him going. Like
after the alien
green light,
after the alien conversation, afterwards I felt bad, and I was like, I feel like maybe I came out a little strong. I wanted to make sure I didn't say anything that was like really offensive to you, and I went back and watched the video, and I was like,
offensive to me.
I was like, wait a minute, I was watching your smirks. And you were totally taking advantage of my compromised mental state. You were poking the bear.
You're coming out
as really much as you could
with a position that the church doesn't have a position.
Listen, we're not getting back into that conversation. We're going process, not content here. Okay. But you were taking advantage of my compromised mental state for clicks and views. Yes, you were.
That's not true. That's not true. I was having an honest intellectual inquiry into an important question.
Okay. I'm going to leave it at that.
I think there were holes in your argument. I still do.
I think you also somewhat agreed with what I was saying anyway, but you were pursuing the lead. You were pursuing the content.
Listen, some of the commentary that we've received about that episode was like, Thank you. Finally, an actual, honest, deeper metaphysical discussion on the nature of Christological implications on whether or not aliens exist. Like people liked the content.
No, they did. It was a great conversation. I'm glad I wasn't being too rude or offensive, and I was also able to find out how you were trying to take advantage of me. But besides that, let's carry on into today's content.
All right, let's talk about Timberlake first. So.
What was he arrested for?
Drunken driving. I don't know if it was drunken drive. So I never remember like the difference between a DUI and a DWI. Driving under the influence, driving while intoxicated, I don't know
I have
if
no
that's just a
idea.
legal distinction, whatever it is. But he got pulled over in the Hamptons, which, by the way, the Hamptons just absolutely fascinate me. That's like a whole world that I would love to just be a fly on the wall for.
Oh yeah.
It's the celebrity, like rich beyond imagination world, the Hamptons. If anyone wants to buy me a house in the Hamptons out there, I will accept. So
Or
he's
like a
driving.
groundskeeper job. You could live in like a gatehouse and just do
Yes.
groundskeeping, and it'll be
Yes.
like a much posher life than
Yes. And
anything else.
I can use all the information I gather to blackmail the celebrities.
All right, Jeffrey Epstein.
Okay, so he apparently it's this town that's like not right on the coast, but it's a little bit removed from the coast, so it's like a little less celebrity like. I forget the name of the town now. I don't have the article in front of me, but he got arrested for DUI, DWI. Now, the interesting thing about this story, okay, so like talking about having justification to talk about this story has built in my mind since it happened, because my first reaction was like, okay, here's another celebrity like making some kind of mistake. Paparazzi are always trying to follow people around, and there's that the TMZ kind of world of celebrity gossip and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
But this story has grown. It's very, very memeable now. Like people have like just totally jumped on Timberlake's mistake. And apparently there was some there's more than just alcohol in his system. There were some drugs in his system as well.
What do you mean jumped on? Like making fun of him, making fun of the law? Like what do you mean? Supporting him?
Yeah, like just making fun of him, ripping him. There's all these memes. There's the newest meme, which I have to admit is kind of funny, is when he got arrested. Like the police officer was 22 years old and had no idea who he was. So first of all,
I think I did see a mention of this somewhere.
So first of all, it makes you feel old. Like people don't know who Justin Timberlake is. Like,
yeah.
Okay, so there's that. Okay, and then so the cop didn't know who he was, and apparently under his breath he mumbled, "This is gonna ruin the tour." And then the cop was like, "What tour?" And he goes, "The world tour." So the meme is like everyone's saying like they're taking that line and applying it to whenever anything goes wrong in their life now. This is gonna ruin the tour, like which is funny. But like the New York Times wrote an article about it, just like eviscerating him, like he was this formerly relevant pop star, Justin Timberlake, and like the cop didn't even know who he was, and everybody's just like totally jumping on him and ripping him, and I don't really know why. And then so I put on what's her name, Brett Cooper.
Yeah.
In the comments, and it's her job to, like, the show is about tracking people's commentary on popular media. Sure.
Right.
But so she's highlighting how poorly Timberlake is being treated. But I was
in favor of Timberlake.
Well, that's the thing. She was playing both sides. She was in some sense like expressing compassion for how bad he's being treated by the media, but also laughing at him and making fun of him at the same time. Like she's showing all these memes and laughing at them. Like there's one that's like, "Mr. Timberlake, please walk a straight line." And then it shows like a picture of him at one of his concerts and he's like dancing. So it's funny, but like, I just, from a psychological perspective, I don't know why, like, I don't know why people are as hard on him as they are right now, given the current cultural climate. I think there's probably something to be said about that. And then Brett Cooper, like, was just total mean girls here. And I think there's something to be said about like how much just validity there is to her position in general when you see like this other side of her being really immature, being really toxic, making fun of him. And like, not that I agree with the morality of all of his music, but in some ways Timberlake was the closest thing we've had to Michael Jackson in the last like 20 years. He was a huge pop star.
This is just entertainment. This is like the whole field, the whole entire genre of entertainment. I mean, he's an incredible entertainer.
Amazing.
Singing, dancing, comedy. He's funny. He's creative.
He's an amazing actor.
He's got all these entertaining skills.
Yeah.
And I think it's an interesting commentary, more of a mark of culture. I think you kind of said this, but yeah, where things are at today, it's like, okay, Justin Timberlake is an entertainer. He exists to entertain us. That's all people care about.
Yeah.
Memes and commentaries and social media and, making fun of like human suffering, like drug abuse and alcohol abuse and dangerous driving. Like I was reading the news, my local news, like this mom and her child were just struck by a bus and killed. And, on a local street. And it's like, there's people are just like, all just feed me. It's like the beast of like, feed me. Yeah. I just need entertainment. So like, if Justin Timberlake's an entertainer, great. Like, this is a news feed. This is a media piece that now he's just continuing to do. Like, people are using him the same way they always have. This is just a new form of entertainment.
Yeah, it's objectification of him. You're not thinking about like what it's actually like for him in terms of what he's going through right now. It's
like Michael Jackson. It's like when Michael Jackson started to dance, and it was like a different form of dance and music. Yeah, it was like mind blowing, and it was like that was the show. Like, this is the newsworthy new thing. And this is what's novel. Like, now TikTok is just like a dime a dozen. Like, you get bored scrolling through people dancing with like, I'm like, how are these people so good at dancing?
They're so good at dancing.
Like, they put Michael Jackson to shame. They're so good at dancing. It's like,
I don't understand
how do this.
How does their body move like that? They're like defying gravity in physics right now. How does it?
Like, what special school for dance are like all these random people on TikTok going to? And then it's like, but that's not even entertaining anymore. It's like, this is boring. So then they have to like be pornographic, and they have to like, I mean, obviously Michael Jackson, that would have been true even in his time. He pushed the edges there, but it was like, now you look at Timberlake, it's like, oh, so what? He can dance. Let's make fun of him getting arrested and then make memes. And like, this is entertainment now. So like, what does that say about culture? That this is how we get entertained.
Cooper's point, though, but it's not just memes. It's like official news outlets were eviscerating him. It wasn't. It's like the New York Times wrote an article on just like.
Yeah, this is what. Shreds. But the New York, I mean, it's all the news outlets are entertainment. Yeah. It's like all.
I think there's something to be said too about. I mean, just the psychological experience of jealousy, right? It's we look at someone who is successful, and we
want people to fall.
We want people to fall because it makes me feel better about me. So if I feel crummy about me and someone's here, I root for them to fall lower than me so that I feel better.
Well, listen, I mean, maybe we'll go a little deeper. Okay. I mean, jealousy is like, okay, that's one way to look at it. But I would say like, maybe parts of us know, like, we're elevating these people. And then we also know like we know something's wrong with that.
He's not God. Timberlake, just because he can move like that, like
exactly. So I just had a
picture. He's closer to perfect. He's closer.
This is the dextromethorphan in my brain right now, but it was like that's cough, the tussin in my brain. But I just pictured Jesus.
I did too.
Walking across the water.
I did too. It's like, that's a funny thing about The Chosen is they had that kind of sports game.
Oh, it's the worst scene of The Chosen.
Yeah, and they like destroy Jesus in this like
worst
hacky sack game with like your hands or whatever, and he stinks at it. Jesus. Oh no,
that scene was top 2 worst scenes of The Chosen: hacky sack and walking across the water.
Oh, okay. yeah.
He was like shaky, like, I don't know, I might fall over. Oh, I might fall over. I might fall over. Like, that's not how Jesus walked across the water. I wasn't there.
You weren't there.
But I don't think that's how he walked across the water. That's not church teaching, folks. Just qualifying my own commentary here before I get nailed by Dr. Bryan for being wrong on something.
How do we know he didn't walk like that?
Maybe he walked like that. I don't think he walked like that. If anything, he's more likely he moonwalked across the water.
It stands to reason that if he's exercising his divinity,
he definitely would have perfectly walked across the water.
Right.
Not shakily walked across the water.
Yes, but then why wasn't he perfect at the hacky sack game?
So
that's his humanity.
He was letting people win. He came to serve, not to be served.
Who would win at a dance-off? Christ or Timberlake?
Yeah, see, that's where it's confusing. You know, it's like, so part of us it's almost like this worship of these entertainers because they're almost these inhuman abilities that they have. And then they're edited in that way as well, even more so. And then part of us are like, feel wrong.
We are unedited
celebrities.
That's why this is terrible. We're unedited.
Yeah, this is definitely unedited. That's maybe the other name for the show. But Catholic Psych unedited.
That's not bad.
And so we have Hannah says DUI Timberlake or 90s Timberlake. Is that a new meme, Hannah? Although Ben says pro-life conservatives no longer like Justin T because when Britney Spears released her book recently, she claimed that he made her terminate her pregnancy.
Yes,
he lost fans from that. See, this is the real part of it, though. It's like, yeah, so we elevate people in these like fantastical entertainment images of who they are, and then part of us is like, well, they're human. First of all, we're maybe part of us feel guilty for like worshiping false idolship of this godlike image of somebody. So then when they fall, it's like that part of us gets justified. It's like, see, I knew he wasn't that great.
You realize what you just did, right? They got justified. You know, that's the name of one of his albums, right? Justified.
Oh gosh, it's so good. I'm not even trying.
The unconscious neural connections because of the cough medicine.
That's right. It's all out there. I was reading up. I was like, why am I feeling this way right now? And I didn't realize that dextromethorphan, which is in like Mucinex and Robitussin and stuff like that, it's at high enough doses, it has the same effects of like ketamine.
Oh.
And PCP.
Wow.
With like these like derealization type experiences.
Is the barrier between your conscious and your unconscious dissolving right now?
This is Catholic Psych unedited, folks.
Wow.
This is Catholic Psych unconscious.
Yes. No, I this is a good point. I didn't think about it in those terms though, that there's a part of us, because we idolize and deify these figures, there's other parts of us that are more in touch with the truth, that are looking for the imperfections, that are testing to see whether or not that is God.
Right.
Which, as we know, he's not.
Right.
But that part of us that's deifying him, idolizing him, probably doesn't know that he's not God.
Exactly. And so, yeah, to your other point about like, yeah, we're kind of jealous, or we're, I mean, this is just really a deeper look at what's underlying the jealousy, or what's underlying even the guilt.
Yeah.
Of like elevating these things. And so
do you remember when Michael Jackson came out? It was equivalent to like when the Beatles came out, and the concerts that he would have, and like the women would be just like fainting.
Well,
like that was worship.
Even though I'm not a sports guy, I do usually like to watch, or I used to usually like to watch the Super Bowl. And do you remember? When we were kids, we'd have to look it up. When we were kids, it was, I forget what year it was. When did Michael Jackson do the halftime show? Michael Jackson halftime show.
Super Bowl halftime show?
Yeah, Super Bowl halftime show. 1993.
Okay.
And he was blasted out of the ground, and he like showed up on top of like one of the billboards or something like that. I just vague memory. It was
like a religious ceremony.
No, it was just like such a theatrical act of him showing up. I gotta put this on mute, but I want to remember, make sure I'm describing this correctly. Yeah. But you don't remember this?
I mean, that's what I've come to expect in terms of the Super Bowl halftime show every year. But Hannah says Justin Timberlake was arrested for DUI in the Hamptons like 3 or so days ago. That's where we started today. That's just a commentary on how far afield we've gotten because Dr. Greg is drugged on cough medicine. This is actually what we're talking about right now.
Yeah, so this is all connected.
You came in late.
Look at this.
We're actually talking about Justin Timberlake.
So here's the thing. He was on the big screen, and on the screen, it's a video of him, and then he's shooting up in the screen, and then he actually appears on top of the screen. He got there was like a springboard that shot him up behind the screen, and then he landed on top of the screen. So it's this mix of the media plus his presence, and it was like people just went insane. Yeah. And I just saw scrolling, I saw a Drake concert that somebody was posting, like, how amazing was this Drake concert? And it was essentially the same idea.
The same move, yeah.
Where Drake is on the video screen, and then I think it was Drake. I might have gotten that wrong, but it was like one of these newer rappers. It was like a 2024 show, and they're like, insane entrance, and it's like he's on the screen, and he didn't blast up into the air. He actually just like came up from under the stage, and then it was like him in the video watching him on the stage, and it was like this intro monologue. Like 2024, MJ did it in 1993.
Yeah.
And he was the first to do it. So, like, entertainer. It's no doubt, like, no wonder that people are excited in a certain sense about who these people are and what they represent. But then when they fall, it's like, oh, I knew it.
Ben Solo made an interesting point here. The actual Ben Solo is in our chat. I remember Jackson stood at the top of the stadium, then reappeared again below again. It was a cool stunt. Probably a lookalike was used. It's like what this comment is alluding to, the fact that it was like a magic trick.
Yeah.
And when we think of magic tricks, we get fooled into thinking something supernatural is happening.
Yeah.
So as part of the musical expression, there's magic tricks. And like it plays on our desire for the supernatural, all playing into like deifying or idolizing entertainers.
Yeah, what a good connection. Yeah, and so then you get into like the David Blaine magic and stuff like that, and it's like, oh, and then they actually started owning the connection. They're like, this is supernatural. This is the dark arts. And then it gets super twisted.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's all about this like demonic stuff.
Maybe some of it is. I'm not convinced that it's not.
Well, maybe. And then you get the other side of it, which, I mean, we're all over the place this morning, but I was reading J.D. Flynn. He has a newsletter called The Pillar, and it's all this like Catholic canon law perspective on all these like political things. Oh, this is a great segue into what I wanted to talk about today. But then he was talking about some entertainment stuff, and then there's a link at the bottom to the Rolling Stones' Brown Sugar, and it was like this video from like 1971 of him playing the show, and just incredible entertainers. But then you get into like all that rock stuff, and if they're not overt demonic, we know a lot of these bands were literally doing black masses on the road.
Oh yeah, worshiping Satan,
worshiping all these things.
Yeah, and that's what, and the idea is like that's why they were successful. Satan was giving them worldly success.
Yes,
because they had given themselves over to him.
Yeah, so maybe there's also a little justice action happening when people are like, "Good, he should fall." It's like,
listen, if you want to get really weird here, you know how the Boston Celtics just won the NBA championship?
Yes.
The two best players on the Dallas Mavericks that they beat. One of whom is Luka Doncic, and the other was Kyrie Irving, who was very toxic and poisonous when he played for the Celtics before he left. So there's a lot of sub stories about them, but they're both they have the tattoos of the eye, the third eye.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they're like, there's like a lot of references to them being like Illuminati, and they're both like absolute phenoms in terms of their individual skills. So like, there's a part of me that's like, these guys making deals with the devil to be as skilled as they are, but they still lost to the virtue and the rosaries of the Boston Celtics, right?
Amen.
This is what we're talking about.
Amen. Amen. Our Lady of Victory.
Yes, pray for us. Ben Solo, don't forget that 2004 Justin Flash Janet Jackson, that wardrobe malfunction.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah,
that was probably the last Super Bowl halftime show that I was excited. I was just like, I used to watch every year. I would watch the Super Bowl, even though I mean, for me that's meaningful because I don't really watch sports at all. And I'd be like, oh, for whatever reason, I don't know why, the Super Bowl, I just always liked. I remember even as a little kid being like 7, 8 years old watching.
Well, it's kind of like a national holiday. Like people that don't watch football come around for the Super Bowl.
But I actually like watching the game when it's the Super Bowl.
Yes.
I don't know. I feel like there's so many many football games through the season, and I'm just like, these are meaningless games. I don't really care to watch them until it's actually the Super Bowl.
Well, another tangent today. Tangential Friday, folks. You can tell that we're done working for the week. I interviewed Dr. Philip Scrofani for the other show that I do, the Catholic Sinner Show. Go check that out, everybody. And he was talking about you, and he told me a story about how he used to talk to him about football and how he had predicted that Adam Vinatieri was going to kick the game-winning Super Bowl like field goal to win it all. And he predicted it just as some like random guess. And then it actually happened. And you came back and you're like, how did you know, Dr. Scrofani? But the point is, like, I was like, Dr. Greg watches football? Like, I thought Dr. Greg doesn't even like sports.
That I do not remember that conversation with he might have confused me with another student at that point. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
What a great man. I can't wait for that episode to come out.
Oh, he's the greatest. So what was the segue though? Something you want to talk about?
So also in JD Flynn's newsletter this morning in the Pillar, he was talking about the Cardinal Vigano case. Okay. So Vigano wrote a letter. I mean, he's famous for being really critical against the church, and he first was, and during the McCarrick scandal, like he was a vocal, sort of accuser, dissenter, critic. He's just like basically like, let's like call this what it is. We need to take real action here, and so he rallied a lot of really good Orthodox, faithful Catholic support.
You want to uproot all the corruption and the scandal.
Yeah, uproot the corruption and drain the swamp, that kind of thing. And it was like really great. And then he started to get much more critical of Pope Francis.
Yes.
And this is a recurring theme here on the show that, people, and this is where it's a really clear need to maintain balance and stay centered here, because, okay, we can criticize particular things, certain statements, certain behaviors, certain things that especially when the media gets involved, we need to correct certain things that maybe they're just the ones saying it wrong. But this can go far too far, far too quickly. And with Vigano, it went from criticizing Pope Francis to saying he's not the Pope, and then it goes into Vatican II criticisms, and basically saying that the church now is not the real church, and you can't be non-schismatic and truly Catholic.
You can't be non-schismatic and Vigano is saying this.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like these poor Clare nuns that have like that broke off from the church that are saying
in Spain, right?
Yeah.
Same thing. So they have like
they have to send an email in like retracting their statement by a certain
right. And this is where I have to say too, like the other piece of this controversial show topics that we got all this stuff going on, and and this is where we have to be really charitable and calm and patient and reasonable. But there are a lot of overlaps within the sort of the idea that Vatican II is wrong, and then the Pope is not the Pope, and then people say like the quote-unquote Novus Ordo is wrong, and the liturgy, and we have to go back to the Latin Mass, we have to go back to the way that it was before. Now, with balance and reason, I'm not saying, first of all, I love the Latin Mass. I'm not saying that it's bad. I'm not saying that anybody who loves the Latin Mass is in this camp. I'm just saying that there is an overlap of some people in the Latin Mass camp with people in the modern church's evil camp. And so those messages get conflated. And so you just have to be really careful who you're listening to. It goes from like, okay, Latin Mass is the right way, or is a reverent and respectful way to celebrate the liturgy, to it's sinful to receive communion in the hand. You're committing a sin if you receive communion in the hand. Okay, well, that's a jump. Those are two totally different kinds of statements. Yeah. And you just have to be really careful, because a lot of times you're just minding your own business. You're going to Latin Mass. You're reverent. You're respectful. You're hanging out afterwards, community, coffee hour later. And then that's where the conversation start up with, isn't it more reverent to just receive on the tongue instead of that? Well, so-and-so says that it's actually,
sinful.
Sinful. And we went off the rails, and it's Vatican II, and it's this. It's like, whoa. Like that's a problem. And then so
Yep.
Vigano, he's gone full schismatic. He's been now censured. He's been invited to the Vatican. I think to the Vatican proper to be accused now, and he's going to be laicized potentially.
Well, I want to sympathize with this piece. Like the scandals of the Catholic Church are absolutely egregious. I mean, they are like beyond awful. And so I want to sympathize with I want to sympathize with those people who, especially Vigano, who's deeply involved in knowing about these things, who are exposed to the scandal, and as a result, it gets morphed into a crisis of faith and trust in the church. I'm not saying that that's the way to go.
Right.
I'm not saying that's the way to go, but I want to empathize and sympathize with, the Catechism talks about like one of the things that cause atheism is suffering. Like one of the causes of atheism is suffering. So like I get it, like Vigano, like I get it.
Yeah.
It's an awful church at times. Like the people in the church commit heinous acts. I get why you'd want to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
100%.
But please don't. It's still Holy Mother Church. It's
right.
Christ's
Please
church.
don't. Please don't throw the baby
don't.
out with the bathwater.
It's Christ's church. It's also a divine institution, and we can trust that. We can entrust the Holy Spirit. Just because people do terrible things, that doesn't mean that we break from the church.
Well, and this is why I came out in support of even when the letter came out from the dicastery for the faith, and it was talking about blessing couples, same-sex couples, and I was like, we better be very careful what kind of statements we're making about this statement.
Yeah,
because if this is coming out from the dicastery and it's anti-truth, if this is heretical coming from the top, we are saying something radically bold and important about where we are. Like we literally are in an anti-church. Like that's what, if we can't find a way to interpret this in light of consistency with church teaching, we are saying the opposite, which is a very dark statement.
Yes.
And I said that, and people are like, exactly. That's what we're saying. And it's like, what? This is then the apocalypse. Like, we are in the apocalypse right now. And people are like, yeah, that's right. Like, that's not mentally well. That is not balanced.
There's your clickbait.
I better stop talking.
I didn't even jazz you up for this one. You got there yourself.
I told you where we're at today. I should have listened to my wife. She's like calling sick today.
No, I hear you. No, but it's true. I mean, and that's when you invite people to look at themselves like on an individual basis and look at
this is
what's going on with their own fears, their own anxieties, their own difficulties with trust. Like,
and listen, from canon law perspective, J.D. Flynn also said, if I were charged by being like, public defender, like if he was canonically charged with, appointed to defend Vigano, how would he do it? And he basically said, I would come up with an argument for him being not mentally well, not rational. And then he would point to all this evidence, and Vigano's been playing into like conspiracy theories. He supports Putin taking over Ukraine. He supports, he's getting involved in all this like Washington politics. He had all these theories about the last American election. Yeah. And so, we're looking at all that and going like, okay, so not mentally well. Yeah. So it's understandable why he took something that's true. Like, there's a lot of corruption in the church. We need to really do something about this. And these scandals are just from the pits of hell.
It's tough to hold nuance and both and.
Exactly.
It's so difficult to hold both and to
exactly.
not shift to one extreme or another, to overcompensate from something that doesn't feel right or seems evil, and then they go the opposite side, and next thing you know, you've gone too far. And like, it's such a challenge for us to stay in the nuance and look at important distinctions.
Yes. And this was the other news the other news article that came out was about the Eucharistic Congress that there's a group there that's going to do the Latin Mass. But now everybody's in an uproar. And
isn't it outlawed? What happened?
No,
something happened this week.
It.
It's like the last Latin Mass was ever said. I saw something on Twitter about that. Like, what's going on with the Latin Mass right now? Are we not allowed to do it anymore?
Well, there was this like order that came out, and then it says, and it has all these caveats there, but it's still crazy. It's like, so J.D. Flynn's pillar, he says, in and amongst the schedule of daily masses at the Congress, 2 of them will be offered according to the 1962 Roman Missal, traditional Latin masses, one by Archbishop Cordileone, who is amazing. We know and love him. And the other offered by an Indianapolis priest, the pastor of the personal parish where the masses will be held. And JD says that the masses are being scheduled. The fact that they're being scheduled at all is likely to come as a surprise to many, with some TLM adherents likely expecting to have been frozen out of the schedule altogether, and others presuming any such event would run afoul of at least the spirit of Pope Francis' motu proprio Traditionis Custodes, which was what you're talking about. And so, they wanted to. Sources close to the Congress have told the pillar that organizers wanted to see the extraordinary form of the Mass offered out of genuine pastoral concern for Catholics strongly attached to the old form of the liturgy. But as JD points out, their efforts are likely to be met with resentment and criticism from a few folks on all sides. The venue chosen is a church that seats 400, probably well below the likely potential draw among congressional attendees, who could fuel complaints of being marginalized and drive up numbers at a rival event being staged across town, sponsored by LifeSite News, featuring priests suspended from ministry by their bishops. Others insist that having any TLM liturgy on the official agenda is proof of an anti-Francis plot at the Congress.
This is, how the other day when you were like, the more I talk about aliens, the less you see the value, like, in doing this show, like all this, like infighting about like the liturgical expression of the Mass makes me want to makes my head explode. Like,
yes,
why are
but this is the world we live in. So like,
why are you so mad?
It doesn't matter. Like, to replace this with anything in media, anything in current events. It's all like what you just nailed it. It's the difficulty with holding the nuance of both and being able to see the nuance. Yeah. And our stupid social media enculturated, indoctrinated brains can't think more than 3 seconds about how to form a judgment about a topic or an issue.
And it becomes so clear when you don't have passion for that issue. That, like, when you have passion for the issue, it's easy to polarize.
You're sucked into it.
But like for this, like, I don't have a dog in the fight about the Latin Mass. Like, I don't even think anyone within 100 miles says a Latin Mass near me. So like, it's great. I've been to them. They're great. Like, I'm not going to die over it. Like I said, at one point, like, I'm not moving to Kansas, so I make sure I go to the Latin Mass. Like, if I have an opportunity, wonderful. Great. That's it. And then to see other people like,
yes,
like about to murder each other over this, it's crazy to me. It just seems so crazy from the outside.
Right. It is. It is actually crazy. It is actually crazy. Like, you go to daily Mass, you receive Eucharist in your hand instead of your mouth. And people will like raise hell over this as if you are doing something where, like, you belong in hell. And it's unbelievable. It's astounding. All right, let's move on.
Let's move on.
Those are my contributions to the set list for the day.
What? Well, you brought up Putin with Vigano, so let's talk about Putin. So Russian President Vladimir Putin and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un signed what they called a comprehensive diplomatic and defense pact that comes as the two nuclear-armed states have deepened ties amidst their isolation from the West. Meanwhile, Kim told Putin he backed Russia's war in Ukraine. The agreement was signed as Putin made a rare trip to North Korea. He's first in nearly a quarter of a century. So this is also very memeable because there's an image of the two of them driving together, like smiling and laughing. I think it's in a Cadillac. So people are taking that and saying, imagine looking in your rearview mirror and seeing the two of them coming towards you. So I mean, there's a lot here.
That's classic. That's so good.
Clearly this is a political move, like posturing to generate fear, right? Like this, I think this is designed to generate fear, especially because it's as widely publicized as it is, and they're sending out pictures of the two of them kind of like in lockstep, arm in arm. It's like we're generally taught as Americans. Of course, there's pushback on this, but generally taught as Americans that like these are two of the most dangerous people in the world, and now they're joining forces. They're bosom buddies, and so I was thinking about this, and it's like, wow. My first reaction was like, oh no, those two are hanging out. Like I don't want those two guys to hang out. But then I thought about something else, another article that we never got to, which was the 2023 budget for nuclear spending in the world, across the world. Did you have a chance to look at this?
No, I missed that one.
The world's 9 nuclear armed states spent $91.4 billion in 2023. That's $3,000 per second. As they continue to modernize, in some case, expand their arsenals, according to a report issued by yada, yada, yada. So among that percentage, the report shows that nuclear armed states spend $10.7 billion more on nuclear weapons than in 2022. And the United States accounted for 80% of the increase.
Wow. So
it says the United States of the $91.4 billion spent globally, $51.5 billion was spent by the US.
Holy cow.
Second place was China at 11. So it's like, do I really need to be worried about anything? The United States is spending $50 billion on expanding their nuclear arsenal at this point. Now, there's a lot of critique about this because all these countries have agreed to never use nuclear weapons because it would end up in World War III. But this all feels very Cold War-ish, and it's like, like the U.S., like we're way ahead of people. We've been ahead of people, and last year we're like increasing our lead by $40 billion on nuclear weapons.
Listen, not to go back. Well, I'm going back basically on my previous comments, looking at it through the lens of the church, but through this lens, I think we pretty much are in apocalyptic times. And
one of our readers, we're not going to get to the mailbag today. No way. We got way more mileage out of the Timberlake story than I expected to. But one of the comments was like, I've always looked to CatholicPsych for like help with like anxiety and distress, and Catholic mindfulness has been so helpful to me. And like now you guys are talking about these world events, and I got to tell you, it's really making my anxiety like.
Oh, I saw that. And then she was like, well, I'm going to have to like stop following CatholicPsych.
Yes. We want to tie in all these stories with like, Christ will, it's fine.
Well, this is like the whole point, right? Fine. Like we can live in this world and these things are actually happening and we can have peace. Like this is it. It's like we should just put in a little ad for Catholic mindfulness right now.
Maybe not world peace.
Not world peace, but inner peace.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, yeah, this is why we should all, practice Catholic mindfulness. Check out my book.
But more plugs. But hold on. When you say this might mean that we're in apocalyptic times, why? How's this
maybe not apocalyptic, but definitely we're definitely lining up for World War III.
Maybe. I mean, we thought that for 50 years with the Cold War.
But there's more economic evidence and political evidence. I mean, you just said it. You see Kim Jong-un and Putin rolling around in a Cadillac together. Like they created some established alliance.
Yeah.
And then China, I mean, this is like gets deep into economics and like sort of world economics, but the dollar is getting more and more devalued on a global scale.
It's true.
And the tie between fuel and the dollar is getting severed. And the value of the dollar. So even when you're like, oh, $50 billion on, it's like, what does that even mean? Where does that money come from? Our potential for like Venezuelan inflation is just like, it's a pressure cooker right now.
Yeah.
And things are getting insane. So, and then who knows what's going to happen? This election, is crazy. You start to look at, we're not trying to turn it into a political show.
We should, you know what we should do? We should live cast a debate and just offer commentary.
Oh yeah, we'll do that. We'll definitely do that. But it's like one of Barbara's favorite things to do is we do like date night. We watch the debate.
I'm so excited
all
about
the debates.
Debate. I'm so excited.
So
I heard the most recent thing I heard is it's not going to really be Joe Biden. It's going to be the Democrats are going to use an AI Joe Biden.
Well, yeah. I mean, do you think that like I heard commentary that this is the only time in history that the first debate is scheduled before the party, you know, whatever you call it. I'm so blanking
primaries.
out.
The primaries.
You know, the event when they
the
Congress. The convention. I'm not Congress. Yeah. I'm still on Eucharistic Congress.
Yeah.
So the fact is, if Biden does bad in the debate and his polls continue to tank, then they're going to use it. They have time still to swap him out.
That's smart because
that's the game plan.
I mean, the guy's freezing. Have you seen all these memes and videos lately?
It's ridiculous.
He can't even get a sentence out. He doesn't know whose hand he's shaking. He's just like freezing. And
I mean, did you hear the official White House statements are that these videos are deep fake AI videos? You've got like multiple angles from like people in the crowd at these conventions and speeches. They're on their phones and they got multiple angles of people's homemade phone videos. And they're like, oh, these are deep fakes. These are AI created videos. And
AI is obfuscating truth already. Apocalyptic times.
I'm like, how is this the White House's official stance on this? This is insane. So there's a lot to be thinking about. And maybe there's nothing to do. There's nothing to prepare for. But
no, just work on your own.
Growing an interior peace.
Mother Teresa said, like, if you want to change the world, just go home and love your family.
Yeah. CatholicPsych.com.
That's great. That's great. So let's I mean, this is another probably controversial thing here. Let's go into, I'm not sure what I think about this, and I'm curious what you think about this. So the 10 Commandments making a comeback. In Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Louisiana has become the first state to require that the 10 Commandments be displayed in every public school classroom. The latest move from a GOP-dominated legislature pushing a conservative agenda under a new governor. The legislation by Republican Governor Jeff Landry signed into law on Wednesday requires a poster-sized display of the 10 Commandments in large, easily readable font, quote, in all public classrooms from kindergarten to state-funded universities. State-funded universities. If you want to, quote, here's the quote from the governor. If you want to respect the rule of the law, you've got to start from the original lawgiver, which was Moses, which is not technically true, right? God gave it to Moses. Who got the commandments from God, Landry said. Okay, there we go. So opponents questioned the law's constitutionality and vowed to challenge it in court. Proponents said the measure is not solely religious because that it has historical significance. Because law, essentially, the argument, without reading, it's boring to listen to me read, but the idea is that the constitutional justification is that all of our law is built on the original law, capital L law of the 10 Commandments. And therefore, like, there's also recommendations to put the Mayflower, what is it? Compact. Yeah. But that's optional. This is not optional. 10 Commandments have to go up. It's required. So I have really mixed feelings about this. Like, there's a Catholic part of me that's like, great. Like there's some stuff in those 10 Commandments about God, and it's great that our kids see that. It's better than some of the other agenda of what's enforced in elementary schools nowadays, right? But then there's another part of me that's like, separation of church and state. Like, what if like Syria law was technically made sure to be posted in every single like school? Like, does this set a dangerous precedent in terms of like what is being required, like a religious text being required to be posted? So I have different parts of me here.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely can understand the different parts, but I do think, I mean, there's something valid to this country being formed on these principles
Right.
And it wasn't formed as this vacuous,
it's not a Muslim
non-state of religion. It was so deeply embedded within the culture.
Right. Yeah. I thought about that too.
So it's like how it's only postmodern, which is, it's crazy because the principles that the founding fathers espoused, in some ways, this is like what leads to so many things that were in seed form then. If you go back to like the French Revolution and the American Revolution and, this sort of seeds of enlightenment and all these things, that this is we're in the full flourishing of those seeds. Back then,
it's like the wheat and the chaff, they're growing together,
Yeah, but back then they couldn't see the full consequences. They're so embedded in a Christocentric culture and a mindset that they couldn't imagine. I mean, some people did. Obviously, there were atheists in the founding fathers, like some people. But it was like just an accepted part of the culture that there's this value to, sort of a Christocentric approach to things. Yeah. And even like Darwin, people think that there's this, radical like rift between, biblical perspectives and then, Darwinian evolutionary theory. It's like Darwin never intended it to be an atheistic argument.
No.
He saw, just like a lot of the original scientists, that, we're looking at the natural order and it gives glory to God. One of the first scientists was Francis Bacon. He was a Franciscan priest.
Yeah.
Who people don't teach it that way, because you learn about Bacon in, high school or whatever, and it's like, he was the first scientist, he's like laid the foundation for the scientific method.
Right.
Like
or Galileo.
He was a priest.
Yeah. Galileo, same thing. There was this dichotomy between the church and science that people position as, he was Christian, he was Catholic, he was just trying to.
Yeah, and he wasn't trying to be heretical. He wasn't, No. So anyway,
I think so it's interesting. I'm thinking here about how, like, before Galileo, I might have my science wrong, but he was the one that helped us realize that, like, the Earth revolves around the sun, right?
Right.
The heliocentric,
right?
What is it? Solar system, right?
Right.
And before that, the church taught that everything revolved around the planet Earth, right? Like Earth was the center of the universe.
The church slash teaching, like the university systems, like the educational systems, like it was they were so deeply united and embedded, so it was like one was the other. It's not like church teaching the same way we think about church teaching now,
right? There was church commentary offered, and like it was accepted, and commentary was offered with regard to science, right? So I'm wondering about how, like, if it's possible that, like, the church's thought process developed and evolved regarding the location of the center of the universe not being Earth, and that our solar system revolves around the sun. I wonder if that also applies to the existence of extraterrestrial life, and that the church's understanding of science can develop.
The thing is that the argument
to include
the argument for the Earth being at the center of the universe was not a philosophical argument. There was nothing irrational about either or.
Yeah, it was a philosophical argument until science was like, no, that's not true.
It's not true. It couldn't be Listen, I'm sorry you don't understand this. I can understand.
There's
the parts
mathematics
that don't
involved.
Understand this in you.
The math was wrong, right? The math was wrong. Prior to Galileo.
There's no rational argument. It was math in that sense is not the same as the rational argument for the fact that I'm not even going to get into this again. That the incarnation is the fullness of God, and it's only a human form. Aliens could exist if they are alter humans, or if they're animals that somehow. Actually, you know what? Elijah heard part of our conversation. My 10-year-old son, yes. And he goes, God is not limited. Why, God can do anything, right? And I was like, well, yeah, God can do anything. That was Dr. Bryan's argument. And he goes, well, maybe it's an animal that's on another planet, and then God provides them with the technology, he just gives them the UFO.
It's possible.
And I go, that's actually a smarter argument than anything Dr. Bryan said in our conversation.
That's not true. So
that's actually possible. What Elijah said. That's actually possible.
When we say human person, why does that have to look like you or I? There's so much diversity in the way human persons look, even on Earth. So it could be that Christ died.
You really want to keep this conversation going right now? We're like at the end of our hour. Why? Listen, are you trying to get into another fight?
I'm just trying to get views here.
Any human, we can have all the diversity in the world as long as we understand that Christ is the entirety of humanity. We are one body in Christ. We are one humanity in Christ. Christ is the fullness of God. Christ is the fullness of man.
So Zorks could be like
God
Italians.
Is the Son of Man.
Zorks could be like Italians. Mike Marshall says, guys, this is going to ruin the tour. Exactly.
What tour?
The world tour.
That's such a good note to end this on. Even though we have 2 minutes left. Was there a quick mailbag question?
I mean, I got lots of them. We can do one.
One of them is quick?
I don't think any of them are quick. Do you want to do a social convention instead?
All right, social convention.
All right. Let's do a social convention. You got to fill up the dead air time real quick.
My phone is blowing up. I think people are telling me to call in sick today.
Okay, here we are. We're back on the social convention.
What is it?
Social convention is, I think some of these aren't that great. Talking at the library. When I was younger, libraries were well established as places for peace and quiet. Now people talk regularly and even listen to music on their phones without headphones.
No, come on. This is like just the degenerate of the world. Like if you're not silent in the library, you are mentally unwell. I'm going to say it again.
Well, it's narcissistic, isn't it? It's a generation of self-centered people who aren't considerate of other people trying to study. I mean, there's no stacks. I mean, what is a library now? There's no stacks.
I haven't been in the library in a long time, but if that's happening, these are degenerates. This is why we know it's fine. The world can end. Bring us in. Bring us home. Bring it in for a landing. It was a good run.
Let's just bring the show in for a landing. Let's throw in the towel for this week.
No, it's the end of the hour here. That's it. Have a great weekend, everybody. Can't wait to hear how the weekend goes.
We'll see you on the tour.
Fire up a new week on Monday.
We're not calling off the tour. We'll see you on the tour.
God bless you all.